Welcome, Seahawks. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. All right, welcome Seahawks, students, families, and staff to the Are You Ready Community Chat RUHS Town Hall. My name is Marvin Brown. I'm one of your proud assistant principals. Tonight's event is going to be broken up into two parts. In part one, we will discuss distance learning questions, and in part two, we will discuss racial justice questions. Thank you to everyone who participated and sent us questions. We received several questions from students and parents regarding both topics. And tonight we have a great group joining us to answer your questions. Each person is going to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Jessica Varese.
Hello, Seahawks. I'm Jessica Varese. I teach English 11th grade, and I'm also the co-department chair. I've been teaching for 13 years, but this is my 5th year at Redondo.
Thanks, Jessica. Brooke Mata.
Hi, everyone. I am actually using in a different room. My bandwidth is not working, but my name is Brooke Mata, and I am the activities director. Even though it says I'm Shannon Rodriguez, she will introduce herself in a minute.
Thanks, Brooke. Andy Saltzman.
Hello, my name is Andy Saltzman. I'm the athletic director here at Redondo, and I've been here for 10 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Denise Holmes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Denise Holmes. I'm one of the 8, actually almost 10 counselors that we have here at RUHS, and my letters are last names A through CA.
Thanks, Denise. Shannon Rodriguez.
Hi, I'm Shannon Rodriguez. I'm the director of the college counseling here at Redondo, and I've been here, I think, 29 years, and happy to be back, and welcome to the town hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Ryan Martucci.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Martucci. I'm the other counselor in the Nest College Center here, and this is my 2nd year at Redondo. Welcome to Town Hall.
Jeff Rosadini.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Rosadini. I am the new teacher on special assignment over the students who were struggling, interventions. I've been here, this is my 17th year here. I love being a Seahawk.
Brian Inez.
Hi, I'm Brian Inez. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Redondo Union High School. I oversee master scheduling, counseling, and the PE department, as well as the ROTC department here at the campus. Go Seahawks.
Thanks, Jeff and Brian. Bill Dargan.
Hi, Bill Dargan. I oversee the math and science departments and the AP program. This is my 28th year as a Seahawk.
Thank you, Bill. And before Mr. Brandt, I turn it over to you. This is my 11th year in the district. I oversee special education as well as our CTE department and also athletics. So thank you guys for joining, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Brandt.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for hosting. We really appreciate it. And thanks to this awesome panel we have here for tonight's town hall. I want to welcome everyone to what is clearly an exceptional school year at Redondo Union High School. I'd like to say we are the best distance learning high school in the South Bay. Hope everyone enjoys the levity of that. We're certainly working on it. As I've shared in previous town halls and meetings, our question answer ratio is always in flux here with distance learning. What I do ask from everyone is that we practice empathy in the face of understandable anxiety, whether it's academic anxiety, social, emotional, physical. There are a lot of stressors on all of our stakeholders, our teachers, our staff, our students, our families. I can't even imagine what it's like for our families at home trying to balance jobs, careers, and obviously supporting your young people. So again, empathy above all. And as I mentioned on the back to school welcome letter, this is a different animal, hopefully this fall as compared to the spring. This year, we have traditional grades back in place, grades A through F. We are going to be on a schedule, talk about that here shortly with the first question. And then attendance will be mandatory. Please adhere to that. Make sure, Seahawks, that you are starting to get into a routine of getting to bed early and ready to wake up. It's going to be a little different from the spring and summer, so we appreciate your adherence to a good routine. And then just make sure you're connected this year, advocate for yourself as students and families, go through the communication protocol, be responsible for your learning as we will be responsible for the teaching and support of the teaching. And then focus on equity, more on that later in the town hall. And we want to keep everyone safe, physically, emotionally, social, emotionally, as I mentioned earlier. And we look forward to supporting you through this journey together. And we want, last but not least, everyone back on campus sooner rather than later. So help us with that cause in terms of wearing a mask, practicing physical distancing, and then good hygiene, of course. The sooner we can get the numbers down in LA County, the sooner we can get our students back on campus. Thank you again, Mr. Brown. And welcome, Seahawks.
Thanks, Mr. Brent. So now we're going to jump into the questions. As I mentioned earlier, we received several questions, well over 100 questions. And we are going to, what we did is we selected as many that we felt fit our panel, as well as we try to categorize the questions, and we feel like we have all the categories covered today. So the first question goes to Mr. Brandt. What will the schedule look like at the start of the school year? Will each class have live instruction? How often? Or there'll be opportunities for interaction among students?
Thanks again, Mr. Brown. Yeah, so one of the first things I suggest our students and families do is print out the schedule from the redondounion.org website and place it in several places in your household, whether it's on the refrigerator, on the dining room table, in front of your desk. Make sure you have something to refer to, because again, we want everybody to get into routines and schedules. So just so everybody understands this very clearly, Mondays, you'll meet with all of your classes, and we've sent out a number of reminders over the last few days. This Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will all be stacked schedule days. You will meet with all of your teachers periods 1 through 6, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Beginning next Monday, we'll be on that 1 through 6 schedule, as you are used to in a regular school year, an A day, in other words. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you'll have periods 2, 4, and 6. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, you'll have periods 1, 3, and 5. So again, please be sure to review those expectations with one another. That would be really helpful. And yes, live instruction is certainly a part of all of this. We got lots of feedback from our students and families and staff, as well as to the importance of live interactive sessions with our students. So I'm going to read this so everybody gets it clearly, right from our understanding with our teachers. Tuesdays through Fridays, secondary teachers will be required to go live at the start of each period for attendance taking that will provide a minimum of 2 live or pre-recorded instructional activities per week for students per course, 1 for each block period. Minimum of 30 minutes of instruction per block for all students, also allowing for small group instruction. So again, very important for us to have that live instruction. You'll hear the term synchronous, which means online, and asynchronous, which means typically offline, or they're doing independent activities online. We also want everyone to adhere to the understanding that we need breaks from screen time. So there will be a balance, again, of synchronous versus asynchronous. So please be sure to check the schedule online at redondounion.org. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Okay, the next question goes to Ms. Mata. How can students get involved and be aware of events going on throughout distance learning?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So there's a lot of ways that we're still working on getting people involved. The first one that we can all do is wear red on Fridays. Even though we are not physically on campus together, it doesn't mean that we can't celebrate our spirit together. We're going to be working with our class councils to create themed days as well and spirit days. We're also going to work on having events, but obviously they would be remotely. Up until then, communication will be through morning announcements. Rather than regular morning announcements, we'll be sending out Monday announcements with a long list of items of ways to get involved and how to stay engaged. And then RUTV will also be presenting starting, I believe, September 11th with their first broadcast. Additionally to that, there will be social media pages that we will be pushing out for you to stay up to date with the events going on around campus, including various activities. And then we'll also try and get clubs started so students are staying engaged, as well as in terms of the student voice. And we'll talk about that later.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mata. Next question goes to Ms. Holmes. What will be done to help students' social and emotional development? Specifically, the day-to-day interactions kids need to feel like they're part of a community and to help bring about the joys and fun times they would otherwise experience in school.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. I actually feel honored that someone in the community thinks that RUHS counselors bring their students joy and fun times. I apparently need to remind my own kids how fun I am. But all joking aside, as counselors, our priority this year, once the students get into all their classes they need, will be supporting our students' social emotional balance. These are really uniquely complex times, and all of us are coping with times of COVID differently. However, it impacts every single one of us in different ways. So counselors will be available via outreach, Zoom, WebEx, phone conferences. We are going to be reaching out to our critical learners, but in addition to that, we're trying to get the message out to our students that we are available to them just an email away. And in fact, I believe a video put out by our counseling team should be going out this afternoon too, to kind of echo the same sentiments. But basically, motivation, academic support, academic planning, and all of our wellness and social emotional support is our number one priority, especially these times. We also can share outside resource information with students and families, and we are contracted with some outside agencies where they will work directly and do counseling with some of our students. As counselors, you know, we didn't choose this job to crunch numbers and stare at a screen all day. We miss our kids, and so our priority is definitely to keep and maintain those positive relationships and connections that we make with them, because we figure that that's the only thing that's going to get us through all together. And hopefully when we're meeting with them, we can explore some of the things past the COVID time, like their interests, things that they want to do, and exploring those ideas and figuring out how to get them there might give them hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Holmes. Our next question is for Mr. Dargan. Is there a plan for students taking a course that has a lab requirement, such as chemistry or biomed?
Yes, because of lack of materials and safety concerns, most experiments can be done away from school, but teachers are planning to use a combination of their own demonstration online, where they share the data that's developed, and virtual experiments that are simulated online. So that's the way they're going to try to address that situation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dargan. Next question goes to Ms. Parise. How are the teachers preparing for distance learning?
Thanks, Marvin. So teachers have been back since Wednesday for a full week of professional development to learn all the ins and outs of the wonderful new technological tools the district has gotten for us to help foster better and more successful distance learning. We learned a lot of lessons from the spring, and a lot of teachers, including about half the English department, did their own professional development on their own time over the summer. And I think more importantly than all of that, like the technology piece is really important. Getting as many strategies as we can to do effective distance learning is obviously incredibly important. But more than any of that, I think it's exciting that teachers are having really meaningful and important discussions about authentic learning and authentic engagement and authentic assessment. And I think a lot of the discoveries that we make during this time of education in crisis is actually going to have a really positive change and positive impact on education, not just this year, but for years to come. It's definitely a challenging time to be an educator, but it's also a really exciting time. And a lot of us are ready for it.
Thanks so much, Ms. Ruiz. All right, our next question is a combination of two questions for Ms. Rodriguez and Ms. Martucci. I do have to admit, part of the question I took out, it talked about how well-liked Ms. Rodriguez is, and we all know how popular she is on our campus. So it was mentioned at the beginning of this question. So I'm sorry to embarrass you there, Shannon. Here's the question. Regardless of the outcome of the school year, will juniors and seniors have opportunities to seek advice from the college resource counselors in the nest? And the second part of the question is, what is the change and outlook for senior students to know about college applications, prep, and entry?
Okay, well, thanks for the kind words, Mr. Brown, but I have to say that we are back in the nest. We have been for a couple weeks now, and so for us, our little team up here with Mrs. Clausen and Ms. Martucci and I are busy working with the kids already. So for us, really, it's business as usual. And fall is always, has been for many years, all about the seniors. This is what we call application season. So, and the nest has been, and probably, hopefully always will be, about communication and support for your kids. And so, like I said, the three of us are working every day up here in the nest. And we're hoping that the kids can see that in the background and really kind of appreciate the fact that they're connecting with their college counselors. First, let's talk about communication briefly. The best source that we have to communicate with your kids is generally text. They don't really like email, as you probably discovered, although we do use the school email from time to time when we can. But we actually use a source called Remind Text that a lot of the students, counselors, and their teachers use. In the senior class right now, I am told there are approximately 752 students. And currently we have 530 students who have joined the Nest Remind Text service. So we also encourage parents to sign up for the Remind Text for Nest, specifically for the Nest, so that you have an idea of what your students are being offered, those services, those support services. And which brings me to our next source that is going to be invaluable for our community, our families, our kids. It's called the redondounion.org website. And on our website, we actually have a Nest link. And on the link, if you scroll down to 12th grade planning, you will find a calendar. It's actually an interactive calendar of events that Mrs. Clausen has put together. It's amazing. So I think we have August, September, and she's completing October. But there's just a link. You just click the link and you are in the workshop. You don't need a code. You're just joining us for various activities and support services. So we will have on that calendar, you will already see, we have our parent information night coming up for seniors, senior parent information night. We have college application workshops already listed on that. And by the way, we have already hosted 10 workshops in the last week, and we had over 150 students sign in for these workshops. The silver lining there is that is about triple what we usually get when we host them in person here. So we're trying to look for all the good. And we are also scheduling what we call drop-in visits twice a week for our kids for 1 hour where they can just ask little questions and kind of gather together, kind of like the feeling that we have up here in the nest when kids are just here to be here. Let's see, let me get down to support. Get back to those individual meetings. I know Ms. Martucci and I have been working with kids partly through the spring, even a little bit over the summer, and for the last few weeks on an individual basis. So your student has access to us one-on-one. That's actually, we're getting pretty good with that now, and it's pretty time efficient. Like I said, we've had our workshops, and we'll be hosting application workshops all the way through November toward the end of the UC and Cal State application season. So those will be posted on a regular basis. And again, like I said, the drop-in visits are going to be really helpful for kids as well. Just a few questions, and we'll be hosting those on Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 2. Finally, before I transition to Ryan, we are already scheduling remote college admissions counselor presentations. So Redondo is a very popular place to present. And so we already have 20 college admissions counselors. We have them scheduled on our calendar for our kids and parents. And we've asked them to actually present no earlier than 4 p.m. so that parents can actually join in and ask questions. Again, another silver lining, because during the regular school season, when we're not going through this madness, they usually come during the daytime, and parents are usually working or they don't think they can come. So we encourage students and parents to attend those remote presentations, because you're going to get a lot of information from these counselors, and many of them are actually dear friends of Redondo Union High School. So you'll get a lot of good information. So with that, I'm going to introduce my partner, my college counseling partner, Ryan Martucci, who will add just a little more for parents.
Hi, everybody. So as Ms. R touched on a little bit, the Nest drop-in hour. So that's really to simulate the love and the energy that we always feel when the students are in here, now virtual. We're also offering that for parents as well. So once a month, oftentimes twice a month during busy seasons, we'll have one from 5 to 6 p.m. at night where parents can drop in and feel free to have a more casual interaction, ask some questions with us. Now to touch on that second part with juniors. So traditionally, as in years past, we start with juniors in December talking about testing, and then we move into the spring actually taking appointments with them as well, offering the same services, just all remote. We will be hosting a junior parent night, the first part of that in December, and more information will come. The best tool right now that we have, obviously everybody does, but our website, using that interactive calendar, being able to see real time which events we're pushing out to parents. Other than that, thank you very much, and please check the website for all the new information as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Ryan. Our next question is for Mr. Andy Saltzman, who is going to use my computer to answer his question because his computer is not working right now. The question is, will athletic facilities be available to student athletes for training before sporting events start? And here is Mr. Saltzman.
Hello, everybody. So the question is, we're working on not a return to play protocol, but a return to campus for our athletic programs. We are obviously confined to the what LA County puts out for us as well. But yeah, in due time, we'll get our programs back on campus, running in small cohorts, following the protocols that LA County Health Department sets for us. But it's a return to campus, not a return to play. Our season of sports this year are 2 seasons of sports. There's a fall, and then there's actually a spring. If you go on to redondoathletics.com, you go underneath the More tab, you click on CIF, it'll give you the 2020-21 CIF calendar and how that breaks down for each athletic program this year. It'll give a start date. It'll give a practice date. So, for example, football is a practice to start date of December 14th. We understand that we just can't show up on December 14th and hopefully play our first game on January the 8th. that there's going to be some time before that we're going to have to be able to get the kids out on the field, strength, conditioning, potential in the weight room, which will go onto the golf course, and some other things that we're looking at to make sure that when our student athletes do come back to campus, return to campus, that they're safe at the same time. Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Saltzman. Our next question goes to Mr. Inez. What is going to be done to assist 504 students during distance learning?
Thank you for that question. So all student 504 accommodations and plans will be adhered to and followed through and during distance learning. Our teachers will have access to all 504 plans and they will be made aware of those accommodations. Even as students are transferring back and forth from one class to another as we continue to adjust schedules, those 504 plans will follow the students through Power School. So the teachers will be made aware that when a student enters in that classroom that they have a 504 plan. And all of our teachers do take the time to review those because we want to make sure we adhere to them and follow and support the student. A good practice for parents and students, if they have any questions with regards to a specific teacher and their 504 plan, to just reach out to them and discuss the strategy and how those accommodations could be implemented in that class. And if they have any additional questions related to the 504 or any accommodations afterward, they can also reach out to their school counselor.
Thank you, Inez.
You're welcome.
All right, next question. This is for Mr. Jeff Rosadini. Will teachers communicate regularly with parents or just with students?
With this school year, there is a lot of change. Thankfully, this is the one thing that will not change. The communication between parent and teacher and student and teacher will remain the same, except just a lot of it will be done digitally. You know, expect to hear phone calls and emails for praise of your student and of concerns. So that's the one thing that, you know, within the whole COVID thing, mess that we're in is still going to stay the same.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rosadini. Next question goes back to Ms. Mata. Will clubs be offered during distance learning? And when the hybrid model starts, will there be an orientation to campus for 9th graders?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So those are two really different questions, so I'm going to separate them a bit. The answer is yes. We are working to have clubs on campus during distance learning, not on campus, obviously remotely. It's going to look a little bit different as we are working with our teachers to find advisors for some clubs. The list won't be as robust as we've been able to have in past years, as we've had up to 100 clubs during non-pandemic years. So what we're doing right now is we're working with teachers to find what their personal interests are, as well as working with students of previous clubs to create a space for clubs to still occur with an advisement from a teacher that has that interest or is willing to take on a club during some outside classroom hours. The second question, and then we'll send out information back to clubs. We'll send out information about clubs and how to join them once we get the list of clubs and are ready to move forward with that, hopefully within the next coming few weeks. The second question about 9th graders and orientation. We're going to do our best that we can when orientation happens. It will obviously be dependent on social distancing rules and regulations when we can move back to a hybrid model at school. At the very least, what ASB is looking to do is to do at least campus tours in small, safe groups. So that way freshmen have a comfortable layout of the campus and they know where they're going. In the meantime, we know that that connection piece is really important for the class of 2024. So there should be an email soon for freshman parents as well as freshmen about the 5 top tips that ASB students are giving you to be able to succeed. So be sure to check your email soon for a link to that video, as well as we're working on a Google Classroom page just for the class of 2024 students. So that way they have a space to ask questions, as well as have drop-in hours available to various topics, and that our ASB students can ask and answer questions. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Mata. All right, next question goes to Mr. Brandt. If it is considered safe to return to school and a student or their parents don't feel comfortable with in-person learning, what are their options?
Thanks, Mr. Brown. I just, before I answer that question, I want to quickly piggyback on what Mrs. Mata was sharing about the videos. I want to thank ASB and Ms. Mata for producing the freshman welcoming video, the awesome counseling team for creating the video to welcome all students back. And then parents, students, guardians, families, you should expect a video from me coming out tomorrow. Again, back to the word levity, I hope you appreciate my attempts at acting or lack thereof in that video. So just always check your emails, listen to your voicemails, check the website as we post everything that we share. And so back to the question that was asked. Absolutely, students and families will have that option. Option is number 2. Number 1 is distance learning / hybrid model. The number 2 is the school's PLP. So that will be available to students and families if we do make the transition into the hybrid model for those who are not comfortable coming back. With that being said, we will have a number of health and safety protocols in place for those who choose to return. So I do hope everyone makes a balanced decision as to what meets their needs when that time comes. And if any family, any student has any concerns, questions about which model is best for him or her, please let us know because we obviously want to make the reasonable choices alongside with you and make this the right fit for each and every student. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Brandt. Next question is for Mr. Inez. How will 11th graders take the PSAT?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So just given the number that we have of 11th grade students and due to current social distancing guidelines that are currently in effect, we're not able to administer the test here at school at RUHS. We're going to continue to monitor the situation, but just given the fact that it's 2 months away and given that we're still currently in this distance learning model, it's not feasible at this point to have approximately 750 students come onto our campus to take this test. There may be smaller schools that may be able to offer this test, and I'll look at it and monitor it. And if I can, I'll provide a list of parents to see which schools around the local area are offering the PSAT exam. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Inez. Next question goes to Ms. Fariz. Will students have live interaction with teachers for most of their class time?
Absolutely. I just want to say I've been talking to a lot of students and parents over the past week, and across the board, the one thing they missed the most in the spring was interacting with their teachers, interacting with their classmates. And I just want to tell you that feeling is mutual. Your teachers absolutely missed seeing your faces every day and interacting with you. I think in every single email that I sent out today to my future students, I said, I can't wait to see your faces on Wednesday, because I can't wait to see your faces on Wednesday. So we are, unlike in the spring, going to have, like Mr. Brandt said earlier, we're taking attendance. You're going to meet with your classes 3 times a week. Just make sure you look at that schedule because it's a little bit different than the one that you're used to. We have technology tools available to us that will allow us to interact in a few different ways live. So with Zoom, we have the option to meet as a full class. And then also teachers are really excited about using the breakout rooms feature to have you break out into smaller discussion groups like you may have had in your regular classes where you're just talking with a group of 4 or 5 people instead of like 35 faces on Zoom in front of you. And we're also going to have that tutorial time after lunch. So if you need some one-on-one support with your teacher, or you want to come in with a small group of classmates to get some help with something you're working on, your teachers will be available to you live after lunch at a time that you guys can agree on that makes sense for both your schedules. That's really exciting. I do want to add, though, that your teachers are working really hard to make sure that asynchronous work they're asking you to do, your independent work, is meaningful, that it doesn't just feel like busy work, that it truly supplements what you're talking about and what you're learning in class. So even though we know that live interaction is so key and we missed it so much, I do want to say that it's important that you stay engaged with your asynchronous work as well, because that work is just as important as what you do in class with each other.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fariz. All right, next question is for Mr. Rosadini. Will the hybrid distance learning take place all on Zoom, Google Classroom, both, or other? And how will students be able to access Classroom or Zoom codes for each class?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The answer to that is yes. The teachers are going to be, some teachers are going to be using Google, Zoom. Some teachers are going to be using WebEx. It's up to them. And most all of our teachers will also be using Google Classroom. If you have not received one yet, you should probably by tomorrow morning have an email from your students' teachers, and in those emails it has all the information on how to log on. If you cannot find that, we're working very hard by Wednesday so that when you log into PowerSchool, in the past, you would pull up your course schedule, and it would have the course, it would have the teacher, and then the room number. And we're working really hard that in the room number that you will see the Google Class code on how to log on.
Thank you, Mr. Rosadini. All right, next question goes to Mr. Saltzman, who's back in his office. Since most sports won't resume until 2021, will athletes be allowed to reclass for sports if the student and parent are in agreement? If so, how can this be done?
Okay, so I just want to go back to my first question a little bit. In essence, that redondoathletics.com has the CIF calendar labeled on there. So it breaks down all of the 29 or 25 CIF sports that we offer. It breaks them down into a fall and into a spring. So currently at this point, all athletic programs will be offered this coming school year based upon getting back to return to campus. In terms of reclassifying, I think I'm reading that as maybe as an eligibility question. We don't deem eligibility here from the school site. That is a CIF kind of issue there. In terms that if you look at the NCAA and colleges right now, they're giving kids extra years of eligibility because they've lost their seasons. We have an age restriction requirement that the NCAA does not have. So that would be something that CIF would have to offer a new eligibility look at that. But in terms of right now, the goal is to start those sports, into a fall and into a winter. We have about 8 sports into the fall, and we have about 17 sports into the spring, and they're kind of mixed up this year. So I think it's really key and important to go on to redondoathletics.com or CIFSS.org to take a look at the 2020-2021 athletic calendar. And again, that's only for this year. Hopefully going forward, we get to return back to our original calendar, and we can kind of go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saltzman. Next question goes to Ms. Holmes. What is the process for changing a class?
Oh, such a simple question, and here is my elaborate answer. So counselors are still making changes to student schedules as we speak. There has been a lot of movement and a lot of changes during this time, and we've been making major adjustments to our school's schedule daily. So many of the perceived errors on your student schedules, the counselors are aware of, and we're making those adjustments every day. Now, if a student is making a request for a change of their schedule because there's an error on their schedule, please submit the RUHS request for course change Google form. The link was emailed out to all students and parents on August 18th by Mr. Brian Inez. And just a reminder, requests for schedule changes can be made for the following reasons. For instance, if a student has an empty period in their schedule, like they're missing a class. If they have a duplicate class, let's say, oops, they were given 2 art classes. Or if they're missing a required course, like I don't have a math class, Ms. Holmes, that's definitely an issue. You're definitely a priority. Or if they're enrolled in a class that you previously took in summer, so you should be advanced to the next class. Those are all reasons that we're going to prioritize honoring the request to change your schedules. If the schedule change is made to a student's schedule or has been made already, it will be reflected in PowerSchool. So many of you have changes even since the first day that you picked up your schedules with your textbooks. And if you need to exchange textbooks due to any schedule change, you can go to the library through Wednesday the 26th and present a copy of your updated schedule to the staff in the library. Now, if there are student schedule changes made after the first day of school, that will also be reflected in PowerSchool, and the student should receive an email from their student's counselor notifying them of the change. The student will be given instructions to email their new teachers and should have access to the teacher's Google Classroom code in their new schedule. If textbooks need to be exchanged at that time, we're requesting that students contact Ms. Patty Ulrich to schedule an appointment to exchange textbooks. It is really important that students attend the classes listed in PowerSchool on their schedule. As they may change, you need to check PowerSchool daily. And again, it's very important that you attend the classes that are on your schedule, even if that wasn't the one that you requested or one that you're trying to change, because we don't want you marked absent or truant, and then we lose the student in that process. So thank you again so much for your patience, parents and students. I think I've actually received about 4 emails during the time that I've been speaking about schedule changes. And just to reiterate, schedule changes are not going to be honored via email. We really need you to use that Google form and then give us just a little kindness and understanding, and that we're trying to get to them as soon as we can. We definitely want to make our students' schedules as perfect as possible and get you all the classes that you need.
Well done, Ms. Holmes. Thank you. And our last distance learning question is for Mr. Dargan. Will the dress code be enforced in distance learning? What will you do if you have to go to the bathroom during a call?
Yes, the dress code will be enforced, and that whatever is visible on screen will need to be in compliance with RUHS dress code. For instance, a student can't join a Zoom class meeting in their beachwear. Additionally, you should be aware of what's in the background when you're on a Zoom call, and if there's inappropriate language or images in the background, those are not allowed, and you could be removed from a class meeting for that purpose. About bathroom breaks, if a student needs to step away from the screen, then they should enter a private message to the teacher in the chat, both when they leave and when they come back. And those kinds of instructions may vary by teacher.
Thanks so much, Mr. Dargan. And again, just a big thank you to all of the panelists who participated and answered questions. If you'd like to stay on, feel free to. I know some of you guys have a lot of work to do. So if you want to jump out, feel free to do that as well. The next part of our town hall is going to focus on racial justice and social justice. And we decided to bring a guest speaker in. His name is Dr. Darren Early. He's been working with us the last few weeks to tackle this issue here on site. This morning, he spoke to our staff and did a great job really tackling these issues, and he's going to do the same today for our students and families. So Dr. Darren Early is the director of LMU Family of Schools, and he's going to introduce himself, so go ahead and take it away. Thank you, Darren.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to participate in the town hall. Let me see if I can get this sharing of screen going. And it's not allowing me to have that access. So maybe Mr. Brown, you can share it because you do have the link. Is that possible?
Yes, I'm going to try to do that. Give me a minute or so. You can feel free to go ahead and start.
Okay. All right. Very good. So it's exciting this is a unique time that we're in, and I'm assuming right now that I have students and families on the line, which is a good thing. As I looked at the overview of where we were going to go, I know we had some students, and I'm not sure whether or not we're going to allow the students to introduce themselves, or is it too many students to do that? Are we going to have them introduce themselves, Mr. Brown?
Dr. Early, it's Mr. Brandt, principal. Thanks so much again for joining us. And I'd just like to let everyone know, all students and families that are watching, I think we have over 400 viewers right now. Yeah, it's wonderful. And Dr. Early spoke earlier with our staff and faculty at a wonderful meeting we had, really impactful and influential meeting we had this morning on social justice and racial equity. So again, we're indebted to you for that meeting and being present at this meeting. So yes, to your point, let's have our students introduce themselves real quickly. We can start off with Max. It's just a couple.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Max Imbrex. I'm going to be a senior this year. I am also the ASB president this year, which I'm pretty happy about, pretty stoked for that. We're working quite hard in ASB to create that school culture through the distance learning platform. So it's something we're very excited for. Besides ASB, I am also on the school's volleyball team. I've played the varsity volleyball team for the past 3 years now, going on my 3rd year now. And I also love to be at the beach and to surf.
Very good. Nice to meet you, Max.
Hi, I'm Katie Cloutier. I'm a junior this year, and my role in ASB is activities, which means that I would usually be in charge of planning the rallies on campus, but during these times, I'm helping more with trying to keep the students connected to the school and other students, as well as bring some of that Redondo spirit home with them. I'm also involved in the drama department here at Redondo, and I'm looking forward to joining this conversation. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Katie. I think we're ready to go. Are we good?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So today's brief conversation is really about don't miss this moment. And we're in a unique time in history. And I know we don't have a chat function working, but those of you who are sitting with your parents, sitting with your friends, I want you to just to take a second, and I want you to think about before the school closures, before all the different things that we had to deal with now, the distance learning, what were you most looking forward to about 2020? I'm sure that there was something specific that you say. Our seniors were thinking, gosh, my senior year. Our freshmen were thinking, high school is just starting. Some of our teachers, I know that we have family events. We have weddings in our family and different things like that. And so we were all excited about some things. But unfortunately and fortunately, we were thrown a curveball. And this is a new moment. It's a new time. And as you look at the timeline on there, there's the past and we still have the future, but right now you are at a special moment, and the challenge is don't miss that moment. Next slide, please. So as you look at the picture, some of you may be familiar with the bird. Sankofa is a word from the Twi language of Ghana, and when it translates, that word means go back and get it. More specifically, it means it's not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. So this Adinkra symbol that you see, it's a symbol of a bird. And if you look at it, the bird's head is turned backwards with an egg in its mouth. The egg is precious. That egg is the hope and the wisdom and all the knowledge from the past. But then you look at the bird, the feet are actually facing forward. So as that bird flies forward, that bird looks back and does not forget the historical perspective on the things that they're doing. As we think about this moment in time, I want each of us to really understand that the historical significance of what's happening and what we can learn from history is really important. More importantly than that, or not even more importantly, synonymous with that is that I believe that the message of Sankofa is that we can strengthen our community, strengthen our schools, and build a more thriving world by learning from our successes and our failures of the past. Today, I'm going to challenge all of my young friends. I'm going to challenge you not just to think about what's going on in our world. I want you to think through it. I want you to take the time to really think through these issues so that we can process them and begin to see what is the impact that we can make. Next slide, please. There's a historian. His name is Dr. John Heinrich Clark. And this is his statement about history. And I want us to see if we can just kind of digest that for a second. What Dr. Clark's statement says is basically history is not everything, but it's a starting point. History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is a compass that they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. Finally, it tells them where they are, but more importantly, what they must be. We have to think in terms of our history as being a clock, a starting point, a compass, but also a statement that tells us what we must be in the present based upon what has taken place in the past. So when we think about the past, let's jump to our next slide. And our next slide gives us a picture, if you will, of the past. This was a year in the past. And in this 1 year, we had Malcolm X was murdered. In this 1 year, we had the Watts riots taking place in Los Angeles. In this 1 year, we had the march where Congressman who recently passed, John Lewis, he led marchers in Alabama over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and they were beat by police officers during this peaceful protest. And also in the same year, we had the Voting Rights Act passed that made unrestricted access to voting, made it the laws of the land. This same year was 100 years removed from the Civil War, and in this same year, interracial marriage in our country was still illegal. Next slide, please. So we say, what was the year? The year was 1965. The year was the year that I was born. And I, being born the second child of Reggie and Bernice Early, I was born into a world of turmoil. But it was such turmoil going on in that world that when I asked my mom, and I asked her maybe about 2 months ago, I said, Mom, I said, with all the things that were taking place in 1965, I said, do you remember being pregnant? And she was like, sweetheart, no, I don't. That should have been one of the most joyous times in my life, but our world was going crazy. And I remember all these events that you're talking about, but I really don't remember what it was like to be pregnant. Because sometimes what happens is that when we have a lot of things going on, we miss moments, we miss opportunities, we miss the connections to our humanity. And we also miss the signals that tell us who we should be during this time, what we should be during this time. Next slide, please. You look at these numbers, and just looking at them, the numbers are very insignificant. But if we hit that slide one more time, Mr. Brown, we see a series of years. 1965, I just told you about 1965. And there were riots in 1965, and there was all kinds of unrest in 1965. And then in 1968, we thought we had gotten it right in 65, but in 1968, we had something known as just the Bloody Summer, and it was one of the most riotous summers after the killing of Dr. King. And so we experienced this again. And then in 1992 in Los Angeles, those of us who were in Los Angeles in 92, we remember the Rodney King riots. And then here we find ourselves at 2020. The challenge for you not to miss this moment is that 1965, people forgot about it. And in 1967, we went back to business as usual. In 1968, when 1970 hit, people forgot about the turmoil of 1968, and we went back to business as usual. The same thing happened in 1994. The hope is that 2020 does not lead itself to 2022, where we just forget about what's going on and go back to business as usual. My concern and the challenge that I pose to all my young friends today is that our actions today, they cannot be motivated by fear or guilt. They have to be motivated by conviction to change our world. Our leaders, our ASB leaders, as you sit on this call and you interact with your friends, and even if it's distance, even if it's virtual, you have to have the conversation to say, this is our world. And 2 years from now, we don't want to be sitting in a situation saying what's going on. But what is our world like in 2020? Next slide, please, Mr. Brown. You guys know what's going on. And it's funny because 55 years later, we're still having some of the same conversations. Because in 65, we didn't get it right. Like I said, in 68, we didn't get it right. In 92, we didn't get it right. So 55 years removed from 1965, we're still protesting the death of black men and women. 55 years removed from 1965, we're still, well, for the first time ever, we're living through a worldwide pandemic that has totally changed how we live and interact with one another. 55 years removed, we are seeing unprecedented levels of homelessness and economic insecurity. And 55 years later, we are heading into what will probably be the most contentious political season this country has ever seen. And to top it off, my friends, my young friends have to deal with their first semester of school, first real semester of school, online distance learning, and all the rest of this nonsense. You have a lot to embrace and a lot to carry, but remember, you stand on the shoulders of giants, and you have to understand the history, because if you look back, there are those who were able to carry this load in 65. They didn't get it right, but now you have that same strength. And our hope and our prayer is that you can get it right as you think through these things, not just thinking about them. If we had a chat, I would ask you to look at this picture. Everybody's talking about Black Lives Matter. I would challenge you to say, well, Black lives can't matter until Black people matter. But the challenge is just if you look around, this Black Lives Matter conversation has gone in a lot of different directions. The question is just this, is that how do you see this conversation? Do you see Black Lives Matter as a movement or as a moment? Do you see it as a brand or as a motto, as an organization or as a threat, as a hashtag or as a trend? You have to decide what you are going to do. Otherwise, you will miss this moment. But if you define what things are, if you define what your principles and your values are, you'll be able to move forward, and you'll be able to challenge those who are next to you, your peers, those who came before you, adults, about you, and friends, to do the same. To really think through this, not about it, so that these thoughts that we have, they result in action. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. I was talking about a slide that you didn't see. One more slide. There you go. So here we are. It's 2020. No, go back, please. Go back, please, Mr. Brown. There you go. It's 2020. No. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. This 2020, my friends, this is your equivalent to 1965. And so to understand 2020, it would do you well to understand 1965. But I'm going to ask you to think about, what is your story? Who are you in 2020, and who will you be 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years from now? What is your voice? What do you see in your society that you want to speak to, that you want to change? Don't miss this moment. What do you have to say and do in this moment that will change the outcomes for not just you, but everybody coming behind you? 2020 is your moment to begin to build your legacy. So I want to ask you 4 questions. I want to give you 4 things to think about. I want to give you 4 charges. The first thing is, are you willing to increase your knowledge base of information about what's going on around you, so you can know what you're talking about when you're talking about the things that are happening in our society? Don't get your information from Twitter or Snapchat or Twitch or wherever it is. Do your homework, study, do the research, so that you not only are intelligent, but you are articulate about the ideas that are going around in the ether. The second thing is just this. I want you to develop a habit of listening to others' opinions. Don't be myopic in terms of just narrow-minded and a narrow vision and short-sighted in terms of the conversation that you have. Listen to others. You don't have to agree with everyone, but you must listen in order to grow. The third thing, I understand that we are at a distance learning space, and I understand that we can't go the places that we normally go, but we have a whole other kind of internet sphere that we can work through, and we do have opportunities to interact. I'm going to challenge you, even in this virtual space, get active. I heard one of the questions about, are clubs going to be in, are we going to be able to do clubs? Are we going to be able to engage? You can always engage, and I'm going to challenge you to engage and engage in the discourse around what's happening at your school, engage in the process, and let your voice as students be heard. Oftentimes we as adults, we have experience, but we don't have fresh, new, innovative ideas. Many movements, as you look throughout history, they weren't started by old guys like me, 55 years old. They were started by 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Engage, my friends. And then the fourth thing is, don't be afraid to stand with others, but also don't be afraid to stand alone. Next slide. Looking at this picture, I'm going to give you a second to just kind of sit with it. Some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may not. Some of you may look at it and wonder what's going on. If we were in a smaller space, we would dialogue this, but I'm going to share this with you. The guy that you see circled His name is August Landmesser. And he was a worker at a shipyard in Hamburg, Germany during Nazi Germany. This is the possible, and what researchers have said is the identity of that man. And this photograph was taken in 1936. And what you see is that conspicuously, he's refusing to perform the Nazi salute with other workers. He knew his values. He was clear on them. Landmesser, he had gotten into trouble with the Nazi party because he had an unlawful relationship with a Jewish woman. And so later he was imprisoned, and eventually he was drafted into penal military service where he went on to be killed in action. But in this picture right here, in the midst of everyone else that was going in one direction, he had the courage to stand. He didn't miss this moment, and because he didn't miss his moment, he has challenged all of us as we look at that picture to say, do we have the courage to stand? As we're thinking through building our legacy, do we have the courage to do what others are afraid to do, what others are unwilling to do, what others have not thought about doing? Next slide, please. So I'm going to challenge you to consider something. You are builders, you are constructors of our future. But let's take this back a little bit. And what if I said we were building a new school? And what if I gave you the responsibility you were responsible for building the bathrooms. You were responsible for building the stalls in the bathroom. And what if after 2 months of work, I came to you and you showed me this? Next slide. That would be a problem. That is a fail. But we don't have to fail. We actually need to think through things and we will be successful. But I'm showing you this slide because I need you to understand that this moment matters. Next slide, please, Mr. Brown. And what you do or what you don't do in this moment, it equally matters. It is so important that you think about your role, not just as a student, not just as a Seahawk, not just as a member of the Redondo Union High School District. I want you to think about your role as an American, because this is a conversation around race, class, and culture. This is a conversation around equity and oppression. This is a conversation around homelessness and economic lack of viability. This is a conversation that is American conversation, and we really need to think about this as Americans. Next slide, please. As you consider this conversation, it's a necessary conversation, and I'm going to tell you why. As a kid in public school, I learned two things. I think it was in about the second grade and then maybe in about the sixth grade. In the second grade, I learned the Pledge of Allegiance. And in the sixth grade, via Schoolhouse Rock, some of the parents will remember that, I learned the preamble to the Constitution. And the Pledge of Allegiance, it says a lot of stuff, but one of the things it says is liberty and justice for all. The Constitution says a lot of things, but one of the things it says is promote the general welfare. We are responsible for one another. We are our brother and sister's keeper. And one of the things that I need us to remember is what Dr. King said. He said, this conversation that we're having today about equity and about social justice and racial justice, it's important because on paper, in our documents, in our oaths, in our pledges, we said we would do this. And Dr. King said in his mountaintop speech, all I'm saying to America is be true to what you said on paper. All I'm saying to you as leaders is to be true to the documents that guide us as Americans. Push for equity, push for justice, because that's who we said we were going to be. You chose to be part of ASB. You chose to be leaders in this space. I'm challenging you to truly accept the responsibility. Next slide, Mr. Brown. Our final slide. History is telling you, my friends, what you must be. You have to listen. What you do and what you don't do matters. You have to understand that. As Americans, as students at Redondo Union High School, as Seahawks, you must be true to what we say on paper. You must be true to what we've committed to. We must commit ourselves to be agents of positive change. This is a pivotal time in history. You are here. Don't miss this moment, folks. We need you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Early. We are going to jump into the social justice, racial justice questions now. Max, I believe you have the first one. So we're going to have Max and our Katie read the questions, and myself, Mr. Brandt, and Dr. Early will be answering them. Go for it, Max.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brown. My first question is actually for you. Are there going to be any diversity groups for African Americans outside of just Black Student Union that will help address issues African American kids have encountered at Redondo?
Thanks, Max. Before I answer that, last time I saw you, Max, you had a haircut.
Yeah, it's been a little longer now.
All right. So yeah, great question. Thank you for asking that question. So a lot of you guys have heard and saw Dr. Keller's letter to everyone. We are going to start a race and equity committee here in the district, and we're going to have smaller site subcommittees at all the sites. And so that work is going to start either this week or next week. You guys should receive a letter with an application form. And so the goal is to have these committees on our sites and for real change to happen. So we will have a larger committee, and then people from the larger committee will also participate in the subcommittees. There may be other clubs that students can start along with Black Action, but we feel like the subcommittee of the district larger race and equity committee will really tackle the issues that we want to see happen.
Great. I have the next question, and this is for Mr. Brandt and Dr. Early. Would RUHS ever consider creating a working partnership with other high schools in our area, such as Hawthorne, Lawndale, or Gardena, so we as parents and educators can compare resources and experiences in a school which is predominantly people of color?
Thanks for the question, Katie. I'll go first if you don't mind, Dr. Early. Next, appreciate it. I think this is a fantastic idea. I plan on reaching out to local high school principals over the entire South Bay and beyond area. I know we can certainly connect with schools such as Lusinger and then Centinela, Hawthorne, Gardena, and we need to have these conversations, these really powerful conversations. We have a lot to learn from one another. We can't be in silos with regards to these conversations. And I had the great fortune of working in South LA for 6 years. I taught near Nickerson Gardens, and the majority of my students were Latinx and African American. And about 99% of our students were on free or reduced lunch as compared to Redondo Union High School, we're at about 14%. Significantly different places. It doesn't necessarily make me a better person. It makes me a more experienced person as a result, because I learned different perspectives and saw different biases, and certainly became more aware of the challenges that students of different backgrounds face in different parts of Los Angeles. And I really ask our students, I know we have some of these opportunities in some of our courses here at the high school, to step out of your comfort zone. When you have those opportunities to visit different parts of Los Angeles and have a greater understanding that a quote I share often with people is, talent is distributed equally, opportunity is not. And we've got to change that because there's a very significant difference between being born in Redondo Beach and being born in other parts of Los Angeles. And I think we have to be really mindful of the access and equity some of us have and some of us don't have. And that's part of this struggle. And I'd like to end with this part. We have to remember, some people think social justice, human rights, civil rights, all of this work is politicized. It's not. Those are non-negotiables. It's just about being good people. It's not left versus right, but right versus wrong. And we have to keep in mind that we're fighting for people, as Dr. Early said, to be able to live in a society that the founders of this country actually wrote on paper. That's the work for all of us, especially of people of privilege. And we have to be of influence upon one another for the greater good of all of us. Dr. Early?
Thank you. And I think, Mr. Brandt, you said it all. I'm just going to put a period and a couple of bullet points behind that. Can you do this work? This is low-hanging fruit. When we think in terms of schools like Lawndale and Hawthorne or even Gardena, I would challenge you as leaders during this time of distance learning to think broader than that. You can have conversations with students in Baltimore. You can have conversations with students in New York. You can have conversations with students all around the country. It just depends on how innovative and how creative you want to get. And what you'll realize is just this, is that even as we talk about, various different minority groups that maybe folks are different in different parts of the country. When I went to Howard University, which is a historically black college, what I realized, I went to Westchester High School out here. And what I realized when I got to Howard University is that me as an African-American young man, I had more in common with a white kid from Westchester than I did with a African-American kid from New York or South Carolina or Georgia, because our experiences were different. So once you begin to get out of those spaces, you begin to realize that even within people groups, people are very diverse. The other challenge that I would give to you is just this, is as you begin to look at creating those partnerships, the question is, see those partnerships as symbiotic. See them as one where Redondo is this privileged space, and then we're going to interact with those who are less privileged. Please don't. See it from a standpoint of that both of the groups of students, wherever they may come from, they have assets, things that you can do together where you can grow, and it's huge. One of the things I always talk to students about is students in our beach cities, they don't realize that there is life east of the 405. There is life east of the 110 freeway. There's life east of the 605. I mean, it's broad and folks are doing good stuff. So get out of your little spaces and just talk to folks. I know you guys have a lot of stuff going on with social media, but I think that you can use social media and these other things to develop authentic relationships, have authentic conversations. I've seen it done with middle school kids. I've seen it done with public school and independent schools. Yes, it can happen. It's low-hanging fruit. Let's go for it, folks.
Thank you so much for your feedback, Mr. Brandt and Dr. Early. My next question is for Mr. Brown and Dr. Early. What specific steps will the districts take to begin dismantling systemic racism in public education and to address issues of race, diversity, and equity within RBUSD? Please specify the district's timeline for implementing these changes.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Max. It's a big question. And first, it starts with just us acknowledging systemic racism. It happens not only in our community, it happens in our school district. I agree, we do need to dismantle it. I talked briefly about this in my first response about creating this race and equity committee, which we are going to use to dismantle this. But really, it's not just me or Dr. Keller or Mr. Brandt or Dr. Early. It takes everyone. It takes parents. It takes students. It takes everyone. It takes all of us to start by understanding where we are and where we came from. Like Dr. Early already presented that. It takes all of us understanding the trauma that racism causes on people. It takes us understanding the small things that we do that impact and make people feel discriminated against, and eliminating that. And so the timeline, we want to have this committee for a minimum of 4 years. That's the goal. Obviously, we want this to end sooner than later, but we also have an understanding and a realization that it's small steps. If we take small steps, and with the hope to gain more by the end of the year, and then start again at the next year with in a further place than we started this year, that's really our mindset right now. But the first thing is, like I said, acknowledging it, and then the next thing is addressing it. Dr. Early?
Sorry, Mr. Brown, Dr. Early, just 1 second. Mr. Brown, just a heads up, your mic goes out a little bit, so if you could come a little bit closer to it when you get.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thanks. Yeah.
Appreciate it. It's not terrible. Thanks,
Cool.
Dr. Early.
No problem. Thank you. Just to add on to what Mr. Brown said is, I think the process of dismantling requires us also understanding what systemic racism is, and what it's not. I think that sometimes when we have those conversations, people reject them because they're rejecting definitions that they have these preconceived notions of, well, everybody's not racist, so it can't be systematic racism. That's not what the conversation is. So I think the beginning of these conversations is really understanding the definition of the terms, getting a clear understanding of what we're talking about, and then being in a position to answer the questions of the critics. And when I say the questions of the critics, those who push back, being okay in improving a dialogue. We talked this morning, and I just challenged you guys. We have to become better listeners. And as we become better listeners, then folks can hear what you're saying. Then we can work together to say, okay, systematic racism, this is what it is. This is the cost. And once we recognize the cost that we're all having to pay, then we'll all see the benefit of working towards changing that. So it's really important for us to, if we're going to dismantle this, we have to understand what we're talking about, and then historically understand how it got in place. Mr. Brandt said earlier that there's a lot of privilege in the on the west side in Redondo Beach. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, well, gosh, you know what? Why don't you see that many black people in Redondo Beach? What is it about that? What is it about the maybe there's some things as it relates to housing. Maybe there's some things as it relates to redlining and covenant restrictions that go back several years that kept people from being able to buy in this space. And now we're just kind of living that out. But if we don't have those conversations contextually, to dismantle it is going to be hard. But if we get folks in the room and we're all willing to listen and really talk through what the issue is, I think we can begin to do this work. And I love the fact that your district has committed, your school and your district have not committed to just say, oh, we're going to check a box 1 year. No, they're saying this is something that's going to take us a little while, and we're going to invest, roll up our sleeves, dig in, and we'll do this work over time. And then we'll measure our success over time.
Great. The next question is for Mr. Brandt and Dr. Early again. Starting with the current 2020-21 school year, what flexibility will teachers have to teach their students about issues of race, diversity, and equity in the context of their day-to-day classroom lessons?
Thanks again, Katie. So excellent question. I'm very thankful that some of these courses and teaching practices already ask. And not to say that we can't do better. We can always do better, right? But one example, Ms. Farees was on here earlier, and you saw on her board multicultural literature, where students have the opportunity to read about authors of diverse backgrounds, authors of color, and that's really important for our students. As we've talked about, we're in a bubble here. Let's just admit to it, right? And it's really important for our students to understand there is a diverse world out there in terms of great authors of all different backgrounds. And I'm really glad that our teachers have created those courses over the years to open our students' minds and perspectives to those different experiences that people that are different from them or are the same as them. And it's really impactful and empowering to students of all races to see the challenges that people have experienced, over our nation's history and beyond. So will we have further opportunities for that? Absolutely. We have empowered our teachers to, and we started much of this work over the last few weeks, but certainly with Dr. Early this morning, we've empowered our teachers to have these conversations. Will our teachers do it in an objective, supportive way where all thoughts and opinions and belief systems are allowed for? Of course. It's about being respectful and caring for one another and understanding people's perspectives and family belief systems. And we'll do it in a way that's safe and comfortable for all. But what we will not tolerate, of course, is anything that is racist or discriminatory, whether it's in social media or in person. We have to address that immediately. And we call upon our students to address that as well, because we are not privy to the vast majority of their conversations, whether it be in person or online, via text, social media. So take charge, be anti-racist, be anti-discriminatory as young people as we will be as adults. We need you and we believe in you.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up. We need you and we believe in you. And I think that in the classroom, it's so important that the way teachers will do this is by engaging student voice. If I'm one person, I have one person's information. But if I have 30 students in the classroom, you guys are bringing knowledge and wisdom to the space. And so we have to create a third space so that you're able to share, you're able to engage in the discourse, you're able to talk about experiences, research, things that you've learned, so that it's not just one person's information. The classroom, the opportunities that teachers will have to do this will be as our classrooms are transformed, or even more deeply become spaces of dialogue versus spaces of monologue. It's so important. The other piece is just this, is that I think the challenge for you as students is this: recognize your agency, recognize the cultural capital that you bring to the space, recognize that you didn't just start school this year. You've been in school for a long time. You're in school every day with your families, and you're learning things. Those are things that you have to have the courage to bring to the classroom in the context of everything else that you're doing, in the context of the teacher being, the instructor in that class, and you doing it respectfully. But don't hesitate to say, if there's an idea or there's an opportunity or there's a book or an article or an application, to say, hey, either during class when it's appropriate or after class, say, have we thought about this? Really, our hope is that, remember, this is your moment. Don't miss this moment. And part of the moment is recognizing your agency to take advantage and be responsible for your learning also. So it's not just the teachers who are going to introduce these conversations. You're going to be part of that discourse. And we're going to have to navigate it. And sometimes it may not be as easy as we think it should be. Sometimes it may be kind of a learning process with a steep learning curve, but it's about us. It's not just about the teachers. So the responsibility is on every person involved, from the superintendent to the last person that enrolled in the school.
Okay, awesome. The next question is for Mr. Brown and Dr. Early. Is the district presently willing to have a dialogue around eliminating the presence of armed police officers from RBUSD campuses, except to confront persons who are themselves believed to be armed and dangerous?
Yeah, thank you, Max. This is going to be our last question, and Mr. Brandt is going to chime in as well. Of course, we're always open to have that conversation. My personal opinion, and I've shared this with several parents as well as administrators, the more I've worked with RBPD especially, the more I respect RBPD. I have nothing but positive things to say about Redondo Beach Police Department. Chief Kaufman gets it. He has demonstrated that time and time again. And our job as administrators, it's very difficult to do our job without the police. We have lots of situations that we lean on them for. Not to go into any details, but it is difficult for us to do our job when they're not here. But again, for me personally, as a Black male, I've had interactions with Chicago police. I went to Northwestern, lived in Chicago for 9 years. I've had interactions with Denver police. I'm from Colorado. I've had interactions where they haven't been positive. That doesn't mean that I never want to interact with the police. That doesn't mean I raise my voice to not have interaction with the police. This is me talking as a person right now, not as a Redondo, as an RBUSD administrator. This is me talking as a man. How I raise my kids is what I'm teaching them about police is to not think that they're all bad. My experience with the police, even though I have been targeted and pulled over, and there's been other things, worse things that have happened to me, that doesn't taint my whole experiences with all police officers. So I want to teach kids that way. I want to teach kids to have an understanding, because at the end of the day, as a Black male, I don't want someone treating me that way if they see a Black male doing something inappropriate, whether it's any type of violent crime or something that they see on TV, and then they see me as an administrator and think, oh, he's going to do the same, or oh, I need to be afraid of him. So that's where I come from when it comes to police. We will be open to having that conversation. I never want to close doors on anyone, but my own personal opinion is I respect the police, mainly because I've worked very close with them, and specifically RBPD. I've worked very close with them, and I have nothing but positive experiences. So,
can I jump in, Mr. Grant?
Please.
Okay. I would agree Mr. Brown, but it would be nuanced a bit. I think one of the conversations is not necessarily, I mean, because this kind of lends itself to the defunding of the police conversation. And I think that defunding of the police is one conversation, but really what we really need to begin to think about is demilitarizing the police. I think if we change the relationships that local police departments and school police departments have with school communities, then you change the type of outcomes. Often what happens when we see things happening in the streets and on the news, these police officers are responding to a community that they don't know and to people that they're afraid of. If we can begin to reduce that affective filter, then we'll begin to see some different things. When I first started teaching in LAUSD years ago, we had school police officers, but our school police officers, they didn't wear uniforms. They had badges and guns, but they didn't wear uniforms. They wore suits. So then when students saw them, they saw them as just another adult that was an advocate for them on campus. Now, when things got out of control, they had to handcuff them, they had to arrest them, they had to do their job. But the optic was different. So consequently, the relationship was different. I think we have to create more opportunities for students to interact with the law enforcement in a positive during positive times, during things where everybody's smiling, so that then when it gets tense, I still can talk to you because I know you. I still will respect you, and lines won't be crossed on either side. But if we're not willing to do that work, it's going to continue to remain contentious. So again, that's work that we all have to commit to. It has to be a commitment of the Redondo Beach Police Department, a commitment of the faculty and staff at Redondo School, families, to say we are going to build community where we see each other as family, where we see each other as advocates for one another, and then we're still going to have tension. It's still going to happen because that's what happens. But you have tension in your family at home, and you have people that you love. But what you do because of the relationships, you figured out how to move forward without somebody getting hurt, at least most of the time. So that being the case, I think it's really important that these relationships, we create opportunities for healthy relationships, and then those other things we'll continue to work through, because we understand every cop is not bad, but we also understand that every cop is not good, but every student is not bad, and sometimes kids make bad choices. And so we have to work at that. But me, at the end of the day, I'm an advocate for students, and I think that adults who have good relationship with students always figure out how to work it out. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Dr. Early. Yeah, I would just like to add, and Mr. Brown spoke about this in terms of our relationship with RUPD and Chief Kaufman. They've done a phenomenal job over the last few years of community building and having conversations about, I know this has happened within their department, about racial profiling and how they need to do better in terms of engaging citizens and citizens of color. And that is work that they continue to do. I think these are really strong and important conversations to have as a community, because when something goes wrong, then people will suddenly be like, well, where were the police? So we can't just make it black and white and just say, well, they need to be off campuses. It's not that simple. As Mr. Brown said, we need them here for a variety of different reasons. And I really appreciate that RBPD has started to invest over the last few years a lot more money in social work and really allocating resources to people's social, emotional, and mental needs rather than going in with force. And I think that's the change that's happening across the nation as well, because officers are also put in an unfair position. They are supposed to fix all the ills of society, and they're not necessarily equipped to do so. They're overwhelmed. And I'd also like to add this. Many of our staff members, many of our families and guardians have either a police officer in their family. They are police officers themselves, and we have students and alumni that are interested in law enforcement. And I'm hopeful that some of these conversations are really going to be integrated in people's passion for that work, because just as much as you can be a great educator that teaches academics and gets through to students with knowledge, you can also get through them in hearts and minds and just making them better people. And I think that's the expectation of us as educators. It's the expectation of college professors. It's the expectation of police officers and everyone beyond, that we have people that are qualified for the job, but that also have the right heart and mindset for taking care of our fellow women and men. That shouldn't be a negotiable. It should be a non-negotiable, right? So Thanks, everyone. Mr. Brown or Dr. Early, did you want to share anything else before we say goodbye to our all of our audience members? And thank you to our students who are here today. Thank you, Max and Katie. We really appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
And by the way, one thing to add, I know some of these conversations are uncomfortable for some people. We are ready for the phone calls. We are ready for the emails. We are ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Hold us accountable. Ask questions. Make us feel uncomfortable. We're ready for it. We're not doing everything perfectly. We still have a lot to learn as administrators, as stakeholders here in Redondo. So please let us know how we can do our jobs better. And we're just ready for those interactions as long as they're caring, safe, and humble and empathetic. We're ready to have all this dialogue, this important dialogue for our community and beyond. Dr. Early or Mr. Brown?
No, just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Katie and Max, for your help. Dr. Early, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for allowing me to kind of engage in the Redondo Union High School family. And so I look forward to more times with you guys, and good job, folks.
Thanks, Dr. Early. You are part of the family now. We're not going to let you go.
That's right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And right on time, 5:30.
Well done, Mr. Brown.
All right. Well, have a good evening, everyone.
You're in the wrong profession, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Take care, guys.
Well.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.